Hi everyone, Bill Duvendack here, and I would like to welcome everybody to this presentation. I am very happy to see that this is happening, especially considering that we have a full moon on Halloween. Can't get any better than that. And what I want to talk about in this presentation is something that I consider very basic, but I realize that a lot of people may not see it as basic. And what I want to talk about right now are the beings that are especially powerful in the world right now, and therefore easier to be summoned and worked with no matter your preference or style. Now, the reason I see this as very 101 is just for the simple fact that you can figure this out by looking at the dominant elements. Now, that is the segue into what makes it challenging, which is the fact that you have to know astrology, at least on a basic level, to know what elements are the strongest right now. Remember the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. So, of course, you've got earth, air, fire, and water. If anyone would like a refresher on that, on my YouTube channel, there is a free video course about the elements and their characteristics, so feel free to check it out. And if you already know this material, then obviously don't waste your time. But this right here, this chart, as you can see, is for the full moon coming up on Halloween. This is what we're going to be talking about. Now, you can take this information and get more specific with it if you want. If you are familiar with my book, Clefothic Astrology, then you know that each one of these degrees in the zodiac corresponds to a particular goetic entity. So in this case, you could work with a goetic entity that rules 8 degrees Taurus if you wanted to have extra strong relationships at this time, or if you wanted to increase your intuition or simply navigate society without any flippant headaches. All of those things fall under the sway of the moon. So on one hand, and we'll just start here with the moon, on one hand, the moon is an earth sign. So right now, the element of earth, which is proven by these two here, and you've got Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto and earth signs over here. And then you've got up at the top, you've got Virgo as the midheaven, which is the backdrop of everything. There's a lot of emphasis on earth right now. So any earth beings or deities or spirits that you work with are extra strong at the moment. So the two ways that you can approach this is using the information from Clefothic Astrology with a particular Goetia that rule those particular planets and micromanage it down from there. Or the other way to do it is simply look at your own personal praxis. What beings do you work with that correspond to the element of earth? Whichever ones they are, now they're stronger than normal. So let me give a couple of examples here. First of all, in the Temple of Ascending Flame scheme, it is Belial that corresponds to earth in the north. So following what I just said, from a Temple of Ascending Flame perspective, then Belial would be stronger now than at other times when there are fewer planets in earth signs. However, Archangel Uriel also corresponds to earth. So you could work with Uriel to achieve the same results. Even though Uriel is an archangel, it still shares that elemental correspondence of earth, so he's extra strong right now. Some schemes have Set corresponding to earth. So Set is particularly strong right now. The ancient Egyptian god Geb. One of my favorites, the Green Man. Herne the Hunter, Cernunnos. Any earth spirits or earth beings are particularly strong right now. So it means it's easier to work with them. On one hand, you'll get more bang for your buck. On another, you'll get more mileage out of it. And that is the basic formula to use and pay attention to when figuring all of this out. So in astrology, Taurus, Virgo up there at the top, and then Capricorn right down here are all the earth signs. Now, something else you can do as a tangent on this is you can look up your chart in an ephemeris and just get a sense of what elements are the strongest. You don't even have to be able to cast your birth chart. You just look it up in an ephemeris and it'll give you the planet sign combinations, and then you just look up to see what signs or what elements, and voila. If you're not familiar with an ephemeris, there is another free video on my YouTube channel on how to use it. But long story short, if you have a lot of earth in your natal chart and you're looking at this and there's a lot of earth here in the sky, this is your power time. You're in your zone. You're in your element. Rock this shit out. Now, let's break it down further. I just wanted to give you the idea of which beings are strongest now, not just from a specific example like a Temple of Ascending Flame, but also your own personal spiritual praxis and your own personal spiritual pantheon. Take that into account as well. And if both of those fail or you don't connect with either one of those, you can always pop open Clepothic astrology and look at the goetic entities that correspond to the particular degrees that are represented in this chart and work with them that way. So right there's like 3 or 4 different ways you can really take your results to the next level. See, this is a common mistake people make, whether they're beginners or intermediate students of the occult. They don't stop to see what the strongest ambient energy in the air is in order to work with it. Most people exert their will and say, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care. Stars be damned. And oftentimes they'll have success. I'm not decrying that. That is definitely a method that's out there. I'm just a big picture guy, as above, so below. If the heavens are saying these elements are strongest right now, why fight an uphill battle? Why not just work with it? It's just kind of common sense and logic to me, but that's just me. Now, we talked about the earth signs in astrology. And as you can see, with 6 chart points in earth, it's the dominant element for Halloween. Then we want to look at the other elements and see what's represented. And the weakest element is fire. Now, we've got Mars and we've got Chiron in fire signs, but they're both retrograde, which means more of their activity is happening internally rather than externally. And then, of course, we've got that Sagittarius ascendant, and for a chart like this, I can feel the other professional astrologers cringe right now when I say this, but for a chart like this, who really gives a shit about the ascendant? Wait 2 hours from that time up there, and that ascendant's going to change. So yeah, it's great for horary and electional astrology, but for what we're talking about, it's secondary importance. Now, your own ascendant is more important. And that you do have to be able to cast a chart to find out. Astro.com has a free chart generation facet on there, as well as Llewellyn Publishing and a few other websites out there have the ability to do a free chart. So it's entirely possible. But coming back to point, now is not a good time to work with fire spirits or beings or entities or whatever you want to call from a Temple of Ascending Flame perspective, we correspond Set to fire, Sutuak in the south. So I bring him up again because it drives home the importance of how you view your deities. Personally, I think Set is earth. Desert, just kind of makes sense. In the past, I worked with Set as a fire deity too, and I've had success with both, with him as fire, as him as earth. I just personally connect with him more as earth. I point this out because many of the spirits that we work with are multifaceted. So you've got to decide which part of their personality you want to work on and work with during this time, and be very specific in your ritual that you're addressing those parts. So you can work with Set now from his earthy perspective, but not really his fire perspective. Now, when I say can't work with, I mean, of course you can work with them, but the results you're going to get are not as big or as long lasting as if you play to your strengths. So fire spirits in general. Now I realize there's probably a lot of Babalon lovers out there that are disheartened to hear this, or fans of Archangel Michael, but so sad, too bad. You can work with them, but it's going to manifest more from an internal perspective. So we still have the dominant element of earth. And now we see that the element that's the weakest right now is fire. Now, let's think about this from your perspective. Let's say your chart is largely fire. In the natural correspondences of fire to the south and earth to the north, those are opposite elements. I point that out because what that means is now is the time to really work with earth. You can work with fire, but it may be harder to get larger results that you want. So think about it. I'm not telling you what to do. You could definitely work with fire spirits right now if you wanted to, but you're not going to have as big a results as if you work with the earth ones. Now, the next thing we've got is down here, we've got Neptune and Pisces. Pisces is a water sign. And then we also have the sun in Scorpio. Scorpio is a water sign. In the zodiac, the water signs are Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio. Fire signs, I mentioned two of them right there with Aries and Sagittarius. The third fire sign is Leo. So you can see that right now, as of this full moon, you got 2 planets in water signs. Now we're going to skip to air, and then we're going to come back to water. Because with air, you got the north node of the moon in Gemini, which is an air sign. You've got Venus and Mercury in Libra, which is an air sign. And the third air sign is Aquarius, which really isn't represented. I wanted to skip ahead because you can see that now we've got 3 chart points in air signs and 2 in water. So one of the 2 in water is retrograde, so it's going to be internal manifestations. So what this means, to step back and look at the whole picture, is that earth is the strongest element right now and air is the second. Water kind of fits in there with fire, where it's going to be a lot of internal work. Spirits of water right now, not so much with regards to the manifestation, but they can help you internally. Now, it's important to keep in mind here that another attribute of water is spiritual initiation. And there's a lot of spiritual initiation that's going on right now. I pretty much really don't care who you are or what your situation is. this time, this year, is touching everyone in different ways. It's impacting us in a variety of ways. So all of us are having to adjust. That is the initiation. So everybody's going through an initiation. And that is particularly profound to consider because we've got Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is the ruling planet of Pisces. Neptune is all about spirituality, meditation, metaphysics, transcendentalism. And Pisces is all about being visionary and progressive and cutting edge. Usually when you have Neptune going through Pisces, it means that the whole world or particular generations are going through spiritual initiations if they can survive their addiction problems or whatever method they use to bury their head in the sand. It doesn't have to be an addiction. It can just be escapism. That's on the lower end of the scale of the spectrum that is Neptune in Pisces. So I mentioned this here because water is the other passive element along with earth. So you've got one passive element that's strong. You've got one passive element that is not. Now for the active elements, air and fire, you've got 3 planets in air, so you've got one active element that's strong. And fire, we've already talked about being weak. So this is predominantly an air and earth time. So spirits of the air, here again, it depends on your particular tradition and what pantheon you work with. But for example, in the temple scheme, Lucifer corresponds to air in the east. So he's particularly strong right now. Archangel Raphael is another air being who's particularly strong right now. It gives you options. You see where I'm going with this? A lot of people do not have success with evocation because they're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And usually it works out the same way. Somebody reads a book and they find a demon or a spirit that's a flavor of the week. And they think, ooh, I haven't seen this one before. I'm going to try working with it. My intuition says go for it, so it must be right. I'm not going to decry that. If your intuition's saying work with them, well, then by all means, work with them. But ask your intuition, when should you work with them? Ask yourself, in what way? Really get into the nuts and bolts questions. Just because your intuition says do something, it does not mean do it now. Your intuition is that gut impulse of, yes, do this. And I completely agree, you should follow that impulse. But you have to ask, okay, now or later? And if your intuition says now, well then now. But if your intuition says later, then you switch into your logical rational mind, indicated by the element of air, and you formulate a plan. And you follow that plan and you execute that plan to get what your intuition says you should get. So what happens are people have this intuitive sense that they want to work with the spirit, but they don't ask any of these critical questions. So then they follow their intuition, they work with the spirit, and no results happen. And then they get pissed off thinking they were misled or cursed or some dumbass excuse. And it immediately puts them off on the wrong foot with regards to occultism and magic in general. Now, the other thing that I've seen happen is the exact same scenario. Somebody comes across flavor of the week demon. Their intuition says go for it. They do the working and they meet with spectacular results. And then when they look at their chart validates the connection. Usually most people fall somewhere in the middle between these two examples. But I mention it here because I want to let you know that if you're really meant to work with a particular being, your intuition says to do it, you do it, and you get great results, it's probably corroborated by your astrological chart. So for this particular Halloween with full moon, working with earth spirits would be good. Working with air spirits would be good. For this particular day, it would be okay to work with water spirits, but work with them from the perspective of spirituality, not your emotions. Work with them from the perspective of helping you go through this initiation and this initiatic process. Now, even though everything I've said in this presentation has been very specific to the chart behind me, I hope you all understand that you can really just do any chart. It doesn't have to be this particular one. You can do any chart and look for the elemental compatibility. All you have to do is know from the astrological perspective what elements are the strongest. So, to recap, the earth signs in astrology are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. The water signs in astrology are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. The air signs in astrology are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And the fire signs in astrology are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. I break it down this way because if the only thing you know is your sun sign, that still gives you an entire set of beings to work with. For example, my sun sign's Pisces. If I didn't know anything else about astrology other than that, and I know that Pisces is a water sign, well then I can work well with all watery beings and all spiritual beings, or at least the majority of them. Try this in your own life. Adjust the lens on the telescope and pull back and say, well, I know that most of my chart is Earth. I'm going to work with Earth spirits. So what ends up happening is you stop pushing a square peg into a round hole. Now, some of you may be listening to this and thinking, well, that's all cute, Bill, but is this really reflected in the world today? And the short answer is yes. All that Capricorn energy right there has been going on for years now. And one of the characteristics of Capricorn are long-standing social institutions. With Pluto there, it's all about changing them and revamping them. And we've been seeing that through the media for the better part of this year and really going back a number of years. So, yeah, this is reflected. The lack of fire is reflected right now, and this is probably going to piss some people off when I say it, but I don't give a shit. The lack of fire is reflected in the fact that everybody's bitching, nobody's doing anything. I see a lot of complaining. That's it. There's protests, but the more time goes on with this epidemic, fewer the protests are, and even the ones that continue, there's easy distractions to stop the momentum from them. If fire was strongest right now, we'd be seeing a lot more violence. And it's just straight up violence. The only exception is you would see people getting interested in politics. See, nobody likes the politicians, but when you ask them about their own, they'll say, oh, he's one of the good ones. Bullshit. They're all corrupt. And if not politics, then people would be getting integrated with whatever professional industry their cause needs in order to get revamped and healed and taken to the next level for the greatest growth and good of all. See, that's how you know fire is weak. None of that's happening. Everyone's bitching, no one's taking action. Everyone's bitching, no one's taking action. You see how it plays out? So then what this means is a few months from now, when a lot of this changes, it'll be different elements that are strong, which means it'll be different beings that are going to be more responsive to the call of the sorcerer. I hope this is clear. I'm trying to remove the astrological component as much as possible while still keeping it focused on astrology. And, you know, the veil is thin right now. There is no better time throughout the whole year for evocation than right now. Set up your circle, set up your triangle of art. If you're using a black mirror, use a black mirror. If you're using a technique out of the PGM with a bowl of water and a small child, get them ready. Now is the time. Not 2 weeks from now. Now. But, see that little guy there? Mars retrograde? When Mars is retrograde, it means a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes. So if you do an evocation to Earth beings now, and you think the results are slow, or you think the results are not coming, be patient. Wait till Mars goes direct in a couple of weeks. Then you'll see your results. That's the pain in the ass about Mars retrograde, is usually it means things are happening behind the scenes, and we won't know what those things are for quite some time yet. Good news is, it's not a strong element right now, so what's happening behind the scenes is a bunch of small things. So to recap, earth spirits and air spirits evoke. They're responsive, they're strong, they're already at play in the world today. So there's no reason to push a boulder uphill. There's no reason to make this hard on yourself. It's all metaphysics and metaphysical sciences. And your best friend is the astrological chart. I try and put these charts out on social media around the time of the full moon. So if you're ever curious, definitely stalk me on social media. And if you don't see it, don't be afraid to ask. You can get the planetary stations on my website, 418ascendant.com, where you'll also find courses on evocation and astrology in a variety of ways. It is under the Shop Here button, I believe, and the other button under that menu header is for my books. So it's pretty much one-stop shop. But like I said earlier, there's some free courses on my YouTube channel and some helpful videos just to make this simple. I don't want you to feel like you have to learn astrology in order to use this information, because you really don't. All you got to do is know what signs correspond to what elements and what element is strongest in the sky today, and voila. Insta-magic. Anyway, thank you for being here. I hope you check out some of the other presentations that are going to be out there. Enjoy it. And if you have any questions, hit me up. For the moment, though, remember that this too shall pass. It is the age of Samhain right now. So honor your ancestors, work with your spirits, and all around, to quote Bill and Ted, since the new movie's coming out soon, be excellent to each other. Have a good one.